Hello, hello, good morning and welcome to Confetti Industry Week 2022. It's Confetti's 16th annual Industry Week. I can't believe it. How many more can we do? God, it's quite an achievement. This is the Do It For Real media panel. I'm Alison Whitlock, Head of Student Talent Development here at Confetti. The media panel is a brilliant opportunity for us to celebrate our graduates' successes of those that are now working in the creative industries. So before we introduce you to them this morning, I've just got a few little announcements to make. We'd like to use the chat function to ask your questions this morning, and we'll aim to answer as many of those questions as we possibly can towards the back end of this session. So we'll spend about the first hour talking to our graduates, and then we'll take questions. So get chatting, use the chat function. Don't forget, you can still book onto upcoming events by going to iw.confetti.ac.uk. Make sure you sign up using your Confetti or your NTU email address. You can also check out previous year's talks and masterclasses on the on-demand section of the website. As part of Industry Week this year, we're running a competition where you can win some cool prizes. All you have to do is tag Confetti on Twitter or Instagram using hashtag IW22, sharing your experiences throughout the week. Finally, if you are currently in your final year of an undergraduate course, it's worth noting that the NTU Employability team are offering extra careers coaching appointments next week to help you get ready for your next steps. So look out on the Employability Learning Room for more information. So that ends the messages. So we'll crack straight on into the Do It For Real media panel. Thank you so much to our guests for coming to join us online this morning. We've got three great guests for you, all doing different things in the world of media now. So rather than me introduce them, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So each of you in turn, and I'll come to Milan first. If you could tell me your full name, when and what you studied at Confetti, and what you're now currently doing, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Milan Hart. I graduated from Confetti in 2016. I was studying film and TV, and currently I'm working freelance as a first AD in the film and TV industry.
Welcome, Milan. And to you, Zara.
Hi, so I'm Zara. I studied at Confetti for TV and film production, and I'm currently doing radio presenting, and I actually just started a job as a production coordinator as well on film sets, so yeah.
Fantastic. Welcome, Zara. And finally, last but definitely not least, to Max.
Hi, yeah, I'm Max. I graduated last year from Confetti's visual effects course. I now work as a CG generalist in a visual effects studio in London called Dupe. They worked on some stuff like sex education and, Netflix stuff mostly, but yeah.
Brilliant. Welcome, Max. What a great pedigree of graduates we have here with us this morning. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about your time at Confetti before we get on to what happened after that. Can you just tell me what made you apply for Confetti? To Max.
Yeah, so I had a really good open day, personally. I was at another college when I was about 18, and I was looking around universities. And I got a really good open day at Confetti. I got to speak to Brian. Confetti paid for a dinner for me, which was wild.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just a really good open day. I got to see all the equipment, and I thought it was all great. And yeah, when I wanted to go into visual effects, it was a pretty easy way.
So that open day sold it for you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Brilliant. Zara, what made you come to Confetti?
I was doing sort of theatre at the time, and I always knew I wanted to be in that industry, but there was nothing that I could sort of see out there that sort of appealed to me. And I remember going to sort of one of these job sort of help places, and they told me about Confetti, and I was sold straight away, and I went and I saw the facilities, and it was like, although I'm a bit disappointed I never got dinner paid for me, but yeah.
I know, yeah. I mean, like, what the hell?
Milan, did you get dinner?
No, I didn't.
What's your story?
So I was I was very much a realistic kid when I was younger, and so filmmaking was sort of this pipe dream I had, but never wanted to chase, because I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that until I started my A levels, and it didn't go so well. And so at that point, I was kind of like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I heard about Confetti, and I was like, well, screw it, yeah, let's apply, let's give it a go. And then, yeah, all the way down the road, now here I am. It's weird.
Wow, I think you were all sold at some point on the facilities and just at that point in your lives. So how did Confetti support your career decisions during your studies and directly afterwards? Come to Milan this time.
So for me, Confetti has never necessarily been about what it taught you, like the physical tasks. While that's still important, for me, it was all about the people it put you in contact with, the mindsets it got you in, and what it got you doing. Because I've met multiple people in the industry that came up through college, university, and all that, and they studied film and whatever, but they'd never made a film until they actually got into the industry. And I remember one of my first weeks at Confetti, they were just like, right, your first assignment, make a film. And we were all like, what? We can't make films. We don't know how to make films. And we were just like, well, we've got cameras in our pockets now. There's no reason we can't all just make films. And it's an attitude that more places should have, I think. It's very much the do it for real attitude.
You've used our tagline straight in there, no, without any priming for that as well. So how did that hands-on practical experience serve you? Because you moved on to the Northern Film School, didn't you? How did that experience compare to other students when you started at Northern Film School afterwards?
So if anything, it meant I was over-prepared a little. It meant that I got into the Northern Film School with people who hadn't necessarily done anything like it before. And that gave me an opportunity to learn how to work with people better, learn how to build teams better. And also it meant that I could be working whilst I was studying. And I was working freelance whilst I was studying up in Leeds. And that practical mindset and those practical skills meant that it's so cringy to think back at it, but I used to tell people I was the Swiss Army knife of filmmaking because I could do every department. And that was because of Confetti, because we did a bit of everything. And it meant that I was serviceable in every department and could get work wherever I really needed to go.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Max, what about you? How did Confetti support your career decisions during and directly after you finished?
Yeah, I think mostly for me it was again, it's not really about like I don't feel like the actual like education, this sounds bad for uni, but like the education part isn't like the main part. I think it's mainly like giving you the motivation to do a job. I had Brian as my lecturer and he gave me tons of ideas, always tried to get me to, do better or whatever, even when it was annoying. And yeah, he pushed me pretty much to be better. And I feel like in general, the department allowed that to sort of flourish, and they could do that for everyone, really.
Thank you, Brian. He's right here with us today in this session. So he's smiling in the background.
Oh,
Zara,
yeah.
what about you?
I can almost sort of echo what's been said. For me, it's helped me become sort of more of an all-rounder. So if I were given the opportunity to be a film set, for example, I'm currently making a film with a TV company, and a lot of people that I'm working with are sort of producers or they're editors or they're directors, whereas Confetti's kind of helped me learn the basics of every role. So I can edit, I can produce, I can direct, I can be a camera operator, whereas a lot of people I have come across haven't necessarily had that. They've kind of studied one particular role or one particular field, and I think Confetti really helped me with kind of becoming a bit more of an all-rounder when it comes to anything in TV and film.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is multi-skilling. You were multi-skilled. Milan was actually a Swiss Army knife equivalent, which I love that.
That's going to end up on my gravestone, whether I like it or not.
No, it's brilliant. They are so useful, so useful. And actually that's what it is about when you're, certainly when you're getting your first job, it's like being useful and being seen to be useful and having those skills, whether they're technical or team building and team relationship skills, they're absolutely critical, aren't they? I mean, what do you think is the most valuable thing that you've all learnt at Confetti? I'm going to come to Max this time.
I'm not sure. I think communication is probably one of the biggest parts that I got better at with Confetti. Like I feel like I was always communicating with people in my class in like group projects or to Brian or just any teacher. Or even just like Confetti management and stuff on how to make the course better. I think in general, I just got a lot better at communication through Confetti just because I was in situations where I could practice it.
And have you applied that since graduating?
Yeah, like every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Communication's key, written and spoken communication, I think, isn't it? In our industry. Zara, what about you? What's the most valuable thing that you think you've learned? There may be more than one thing, but
Yeah, I think mine might sound a bit corny, but mine is generally like the people kind of I became friends with and the network I made. So during Confetti, there was so many networking events. There were so many, for example, Industry Week was a great one, where you got to sort of speak to people from the industry, and it brings everyone else together from the university and the college to kind of network and discuss things. There was a lot of events happening in Antenna. I remember I always used to go to these events and network as well as with the students, but also, you know, the lecturers, people that were just in the industry and just used to be at Antenna. And for me, I really learned how important the networking was, because you can sort of have the skills and know what you're doing, but when you're in this industry, the biggest thing for me is networking, because most of the time you can apply for jobs, but most jobs do come through the people you know, and that only happens through networking.
can I just ask you to rewind yourself to your student self? Were you comfortable with networking? Because a lot of students, I find, have a kind of like natural, well, it doesn't naturally come to us, networking, does it? So did you have any fears or, you know, confidence issues with networking, do you think? And how did you overcome them?
I think I've always been a bit of a confident person. However, when I was put into a situation where there's almost all of these people who you kind of inspire to be like, I did feel a bit intimidated, but I used to always go with all of my sort of friends in university, and like we used to all go together. We was almost like a clique that we would all go to networking events together. We'd find out about an event, we'd all ask each other, and we was almost like our own little family. So when we used to go to these events, I was so much more confident because I had someone else with me who's also doing TV and film. So we would both approach someone and ask them questions as a duo, as opposed to me going by myself. So I think it really helped build my confidence to do that. But yeah, it was definitely sort of going with everyone who was on my course with me.
Did you find that it built your confidence by practicing that?
Absolutely, yeah.
What about you, Max? Networking?
Yeah, I never actually went into like a networking event or anything because most of my uni was in COVID.
Right.
So yeah, I never actually got to do much of that. I just made myself message people that were in jobs that I liked in LinkedIn, like on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I just like forced myself to message them and just have a conversation.
Forced yourself. You became a LinkedIn lurker.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time lurking on LinkedIn, following graduates, to be honest with you. And I mean, you know, because, you know, you are a lifeblood basically at Confetti. You know, we celebrate your successes, and you know, so that's good. So we can come on to how you found work during COVID, because obviously you've all got a very certain type of experience, and we've all been living through COVID for the last couple of years. I want to come on to that in a minute. But before I do, I'd just like to ask Milan what the most valuable thing was that you learnt.
Yeah, well, I agree with these guys. Like the networking, the socializing, the communication, that's key. But also on a more technical side, what it taught me was how sometimes the industry can spin on a dime. When I started, we were still shooting stuff on tape and then digitizing it. And then all of a sudden, at some point, that just vanished and we were moving on to just pure digital. And that immediately taught me that, okay, nothing is set in stone. Everything is going to be changing constantly. So you've got to keep on top of it and sort of look ahead and keep an eye out for like what's coming up. Because if you can get ahead and be good at something that's coming up, immediately you're the expert, you're the one that people are going to turn to. And so that was a very early lesson that it taught me. But yeah, same as these guys, really, communication is always the key part. I hated networking, still hate it, but it's got to be done.
A necessary evil, isn't it? And I don't mean it is evil, but you know, it pushes people out of their comfort zone because you have to find a confidence that you might not necessarily naturally have around professional people that have been in the industry a lot longer, and you just got to kind of like knuckle down and do it, haven't you, really? You've touched upon something really interesting, and it's a student question that has come in, but I'm going to ask it now. How do you stay on top of your subject area while you're in between jobs or job hunting? I thought it was a really good question. Because obviously you're all freelance to a degree. Max, I guess you're not so much. You're probably on a contract, but and relatively new entrant. But technology moves at such a pace. How do you keep up with that?
Well, for me, there's in the AD department, things don't change massively. Shoots get run the way they've been run for a good long time. And in terms of technology, we have our software, we have like Movie Magic and, well, Studio Binder these days and all sorts, but nothing massively changed. I think what changes more than anything, and has changed more than anything, are the production practices in terms of the world at large. So obviously there's the COVID stuff. I'm sure we'll touch on that later, but a massive thing right now has been green initiatives that shoots are doing. And I've noticed a lot of people getting work as green runners, where they're in charge of the whole productions, recycling and calculating how much petrol we're using and how we can be greener. And so that's what I've been looking at a lot recently. There's a lot of good Instagram pages that follow stuff like that. So yeah, I think just by working, you end up keeping up with it, and you learn to learn very quickly. I think that's the key more than anything.
Sure. What about you, Max? Have you encountered any new technology changes in the time since you graduated?
I mean, everything changes in my industry like every 6 months. It's kind of wild. And I don't think there have been any major ones, but I've had to, you just sort of have to learn really quick. Is the thing. I think as soon as I got into a job, and I think it just happens naturally, you do just develop an ability to pick up stuff way quicker. I think because you know that all of your time is valuable when you're working, and like you are costing the company money. You just got like the extra motivation to pick it up way faster. So I had to learn some new software just for like virtual production, where you preview scenes in 3D. And I learned it in an afternoon. And previously that kind of thing would have taken me like 2-3 weeks. But yeah, you just sort of learn the way of learning that kind of thing way faster.
Because everything's so fast as well, and it is such a rapidly moving industry, I think you get sucked into that as well, and you just your working practice increases speed as well. It gets faster and faster. Zara, what about you? How do you keep on top of learning and training and new practice?
So luckily I've stayed away from the technical side. However, when I have been on shoots, I think you naturally pick things up by sort of going on shoots with different people. So for example, I was on a shoot recently where someone was showing me some new sort of virtual reality tech, and it's something I've never seen, but it's just kind of having the interest to educate yourself as much as you can in the time frame you have with that person. So again, it's the networking. When you're coming across people on set and they're showing you new things or the next sort of tech that's coming out, it's just kind of asking them questions and becoming familiar with it. So mine, I guess, is just through the networking and through the people I meet. I kind of give them opportunity to take me as I network.
Sure. Your audio is just cutting out a little bit again. I know you were having some audio trouble, so we'll try and get on top of that.
That actually reminded me of somewhere
Yeah.
something I should bring up actually. Film festivals. It's one of those where they're not easy to go to. They're not cheap. It's not easy to find the time to sometimes. But I have learned quite a lot from. I know Sheffield Doc Fest is a fantastic one. It's maybe not in my wheelhouse, documentaries, but I go there. I try to go there every year now because there is so much technology they show off there as well. And I got a chance to go to a cinematography film festival, and that was very much. I felt like a wolf in sheep's clothing there, pretending to know what I was on about with cameras. But that was fascinating to see that things are changing massively, and to actually get a look at what people are doing. So I think, yeah, if you can try and get to those sorts of events,
There is
they
another
can
one
teach you a
called,
massive amount.
you're absolutely right, Milan. There's Media Production Technology Show. I think it's just been renamed. It's the old Broadcast Video Expo. Obviously, that all stopped in COVID for the last 2 years, but I think they're actually doing the first in-person version of that again in London in the next couple of months. I think it might be May. But if you just Google these kind of production shows, you'll find a long list of stuff, and actually a lot of them are free to access as well, so look out for those. So other things I want to talk about, it's all going to get, I want to talk a lot about COVID and how you found that and how production practices might have changed, because I know, Milan, you were actually a COVID supervisor, weren't you, recently?
Yeah.
So we can talk about that. But before that, because I'm getting ahead of myself, let's talk about what happened directly after your graduation. So Max, I'm going to ask you first.
Okay, I had a pretty, I don't know, boring maybe is the word, graduation period. Like I finished, and then immediately I just started applying for everything that I could. I'd been applying for jobs before and I had all my stuff ready. And yeah, I just applied for as many jobs as I could physically. I applied for like 30 a day at one point. It was just insane numbers. Just because I knew that if I had the numbers, eventually someone would be interested. And yeah.
Yeah, so the law of kind of like, you know, putting yourself out there and just keep on putting yourself out there. If you know, sooner or later you're going to win. You're going to get some comeback, aren't you? You're going to get some positive results from that. So roughly speaking, because we did talk a little bit about this offline before this morning. How many jobs did you apply for over what time frame? I think you really went for it, didn't you? You just
Yeah.
like...
It has to be around 70 to 90.
Wow.
And I got rejected from like, you know, if it's 90, like 87 of them. But yeah, I think that's another thing, just like willingness to sort of keep going and not get self-conscious about people not liking your work.
Yeah.
I think that was a big thing that's hurt people in the past.
So, yeah, obviously you applied for a hell of a lot of jobs and you were rejected from a lot of jobs. And you know what? That happens. Everyone, the best people in the world, award-winning people, that happens too. So how did you deal with that rejection? What was your mindset to help you cope with that and just carry on going?
I think I felt quite confident that I would get a job eventually. And like, if I didn't, I had, you know, other routes that I could go down, or, you know, I could do other things. But I just had the realization that I didn't really have to entirely rely on it, because I could just, you know, retrain or something if I had to.
So did you have like a plan B and a plan C?
Yeah, I think I did. I wanted to do postgraduate. So I was going to do a master's in maybe computer engineering or teaching or something. And yeah, that was my main backup, I think. If I didn't get a job by, you know, like August, October-ish kind of period, I would have probably gone for it.
So you were giving yourself a time frame. It's like, by this point, if I haven't got anywhere with these 70 odd applications, then that's it. I'm going to rethink.
Yeah, and then just try it again the next year, see if it would work.
But as I understand it from what we've talked about offline, you had an amazing show reel, you had an amazing final project. Is that paraphrasing here?
It was quite good. Yeah, I spent quite a lot of time. Brian was convinced it wouldn't work. I spent a lot of time on making a big final project that looked impressive. So yeah, I pretty much had, it didn't look like a lot until like the last week, and then it just looked pretty good. And yeah, then I just put that all over.
Can you just describe that? Can you summarize what that final project was? It a single piece or was it a show reel? What was it?
It was it was a big system where you would generate like a huge environment in 3D. So you would input like a couple boxes, right, in 3D. And then it would be like, oh, this box means that you want a mountain. And then it would use that to generate a full environment. So if I gave it to someone that wasn't particularly techy, and I was like, here you go, lay out the environment that you want, they'll place down these boxes and then it'll generate an environment exactly how they want it. So yeah, I made that and demonstrated how it would work and made a pretty looking render, and then that worked.
And at your winning interview, as it were, did you demonstrate that?
I didn't actually. Weirdly, I sort of did another thing while I was doing that main project, which was like a little side thing, and my company were really interested in that. It was just like the software that I used to do it. They were just really interested in that. They didn't care about how I did the actual thing, but yeah.
So you had a lot of irons in the fire. Not only do you have a lot of applications going, and you know, speculate to accumulate, I think the expression is, but you also had your big project, which was your showcase project, but some other stuff going on in the background as well,
Yeah.
that actually got you the job. That's good to know. Have many irons in many fires. And
Exactly.
have, lots of different projects that showcase your full breadth of skills, I would say. Zara, I'd like to come on to you now because you've got quite you've got a twisty-turny route to where you are now. So if you could just talk us through that.
Yes. So when I left Confetti, I was so I was just so motivated at the time. I was raring to go. I was ready to just go and hit the industry. So I was doing freelancing for a bit. I was sort of making music videos for artists. I was working for corporate companies, creating advertisements for them. And I was doing a lot of that for a while. And I was finding that freelancing was becoming difficult for me as a videographer when I wasn't driving, because I had so much equipment and a small girl, I couldn't carry it all by myself. So I was struggling quite a bit. So I think a year later, I moved to Manchester to try and hit the media city. So I sort of live near Media City, and I was just applying for so many jobs. I was still freelancing at this point, so I was making music videos for artists in Manchester. I was making videos for events in Manchester. And I remember one time I applied for a role with BBC, and it was for a runner. And obviously runners kind of tend to be where you kind of start off in TV. So I applied for this role, and I remember weeks and weeks later finding out there was 12,000 applicants, and it wasn't even a paid role. And I just thought, wow, like, this is very competitive. And it kind of scared me a bit. I think I lasted in Manchester for a year, decided to come back, and kind of fell into sort of more the corporate world, in the sense of working for insurance companies. And I kind of came out of freelancing. So it was really, I kind of started off leaving Confetti with all of this passion, all of this drive. I tried so hard, but it was so competitive, and it was so difficult to find work all the time to, pay me enough every day or every month as a freelancer. So I was struggling. But then I think a few years sort of later, moving on, I started to get back into it because it was what I loved. It was what my passion was. And I was still in touch with a lot of people from Confetti. And I was seeing them doing things, and I was almost envious, thinking, I've just done this degree and I love doing what I do, and I've fallen out of it. So I kind of just went back into it. At this point, I sold my equipment, so I had no camera, I didn't have anything. So I remember seeing a friend of mine who was a singer, and I had an iPhone, and I just said, right, let me just make a music video for you. So I made her a music video on my iPhone. I had a smoke machine. I created this sort of smoky effect in her bedroom. Some tips I learned from Confetti filming was putting foil on the windows and blocking out the light. So I did all of that. And I remember I went just doing that. I remember just thinking, this is amazing. Like, I love it. So I just wanted to get back into it. So I'm now sort of working with a TV station called Brit Asia. We're making a film, and I've kind of used that passion again, brought it back, and kind of just networked on social media a lot. During this time, I was also approached through social media to be a radio presenter. I went traveling, so I used to vlog a lot. I was vlogging everything I was doing. I was just trying to get myself out there, and really using Instagram as my main platform. And through that, I was approached to do radio. Did radio for about a year, was then scouted, headhunted by another radio station, and I'm now with them. And so yeah, that's kind of my journey of that. And I missed film and TV a lot. I love radio, and I definitely want to continue in that. But TV and film, I think when I lost the passion and I stopped it for a couple of years, going back into it, it reminded me of everything. It took me back to just being on set with all of my friends in Confetti, and even now, like I'm doing this film, I get in touch with people from Confetti and just sort of still network with them, because they're still helping me and I'm still helping them. So yeah, that's kind of my journey from leaving Confetti.
That's quite a journey. So you're doing a lot of presenting now, aren't you? Radio and on screen.
Yes. So I'm doing a lot of radio. I've recently been approached for a few sort of TV chat shows for pilots. I'm just very cautious of what kind of work I'm taking on and how much I'm taking on, because I found that when I first left Confetti, I was taking on every single thing, and in some senses it was great, because I was creating so many more opportunities for myself. But then it was trying to find the right balance of, okay, don't take on way too much, because then your focus is kind of nowhere, like you haven't got a focus thing. So I was turning up to a set and still having yesterday's set on my mind, and because I was just overwhelmed. So I think it's now just finding the right balance of how much work you're taking on, so that you can give your full sort of attention to what you're doing.
But it sounds to me like you tried an awful lot of different things to help you focus on the thing that you really wanted to do, and you needed that breakaway in an insurance company job to reignite your passion, your true passion for the stuff that gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, I don't know if I feel like most people in the industry have almost gone through that as well. They've kind of ended up going into a job what they don't want because of how hard the industry is. But then they realize that actually you've still got some passion left in you, and there's always time and a chance to sort of continue doing it.
That's really inspiring. And the frightening statistic you gave of a BBC runner job, unpaid runner job of 12,000 applicants is extraordinary. I wonder who got the job in the end. How many jobs were there? Do you happen to know? Was it more than one runner job? Was it a pool of runners that they were after?
Yeah, they were looking for one runner for a children's TV show. I can't remember. I don't know which show it was, but yeah, it was just one role.
Oh my goodness me. I suppose actually talking about BBC and children's is a beautiful segue to you, Milan, because have you worked for children's at any point?
No, I haven't.
I completely misunderstood that. Tell us what your story is. What happened after you graduated then?
So after, I finished Confetti in 2016, and then when I finished, I got an offer from the Northern Film School for their university course and everything. And I just wanted to make sure that this was definitely what I wanted to do. Because as Max mentioned, like, it's a lot of rejection, this sort of work. And so I wanted to make sure that I could take it and do it, especially with my roles being freelance. So I took a year out and worked freelance, and that was what I did, just to make sure I could do it, basically, to prove to myself that I could do it. So I deferred that Northern Film School for a year. Worked freelance, did all sorts, did some bad jobs where I got taken advantage of, which is very much why I advocate for that sort of stuff now of know your worth. You are worth more than a lot of these places are paying you, and they are making a lot more money off you. Yeah, that was for a year working freelance. Then I went on to the Northern Film School, did 3 years up there, planned on staying in Leeds. But unfortunately, I graduated from there during lockdown, which was a whole different kind of hell.
Goodness me. And things have, hopefully you're in a slightly better position
Definitely,
than 2
yeah.
years ago. Okay, we're moving into COVID now, I feel, with this. And thanks also for your questions. We're getting questions in on chat. I'm going to come on to those, I promise, because they're great questions. I want to talk a little bit about COVID and how that's been. Milan, since you touched on the subject, talk me through that, how it was for you graduating in the middle of lockdown.
So the Northern Film School runs their stuff a lot like Confetti. You have a final major project at the end, and they basically pick 10 films to make, and everyone can pitch a film to the entire year, and then 10 of the films get picked. We had like 40, 50 pitches. My film got selected as a writer-director. Mine got selected, and we put together a team to make a film. And it was going to be amazing. We managed to get ITV's old studios, build a set in there. We had plans for big action scenes, massive film. It was going to be great. And then the day before we started shooting, Boris announced the first lockdown. And so through a series of insurance issues with the university and all sorts of problems that cropped up, the film ended up getting cancelled. And my graduation film was the only one that didn't get made, unfortunately, because we were the last to shoot, and it just, yeah, lockdown hit at that bad time. And so after university and graduating and everything, did dissertation and all that during lockdown, during the first lockdown, which seems so long away now. Headed out then into an industry, and I didn't work for a good while. I did the odd job here and there as first AD and some runner stuff on, but that was just daily work. Then didn't work for a good while up until recently. I managed to get a job on ITV's Without Sin, which is a high-end drama they've just shot in Nottingham, because I ended up coming back to Nottingham. I was on that as COVID floor supervisor. And that was, since doing that, that has been my now leap back into the industry. I'm now working regularly from that. And being on the COVID team, boy, it's rough. It was rough because we were right at the Omicron time. Yeah. And that was hard because regulations were changing so often, and you were dealing with crew that some were coming off other productions, some were staying with you. The government guidelines were different to our production guidelines, and dealing with all of that was hell. But what it ultimately meant is we got very close with every single department, and that was my key to now getting continued work. I made sure to let everyone know, like at the end of a shoot, you'd go to the pub or whatever and chat to everyone. I would let everyone know, COVID's not my passion. I'm not in here for a career in COVID. Floor supervisor. Yeah, I mainly do AD work and stuff like that. And so off that, I'm now managing to get regular work on commercials and shorts and everything like that.
So interesting, because obviously COVID, we're coming out of lockdown now, and things feel very, very different to how they felt even 6 months ago, 3 months ago, actually. We have no current restrictions in place, etc. So, okay, do you anticipate, or do you know if the COVID supervisor role will just disappear now?
Not anytime soon. from as far as I can tell. So the thing there's a organization called First Option Safety, which runs the health and safety for most high-end productions, back to sort of standard productions. They basically, for insurance purposes, they have certain requirements which are basically the same lockdown requirements as the first lockdown. So 14 days of isolation, PCR testing. Yeah, it all seems quite anachronistic at this point, but yeah, we're still having to do that. And so from what I've heard, I haven't done any COVID work recently, but well, not since January. But from what I've heard, it's still exactly the same. And there's no signs of it changing purely for insurance reasons.
So that's really interesting, because in some of our minds, it's like it's over. We're moving on. We're moving through. It's business as usual. That's not the case in high-end TV production, as you understand it. Is that correct?
And that's the hard part, because you are trying to maintain these standards, the 2 meter distancing, everyone hand sanitizing, everyone wearing masks and everything while you're on set. And then as soon as they call cut, everyone can just go to the pub and do whatever they want. And so you are having to shout at people saying, please put on your mask. And they're going, oh, but it's not the guidelines. I don't have to. And so that's the most disheartening and hard part of that job. But don't let me deter anyone from applying to COVID positions, because it is a fantastic way to get into the industry.
Yeah, this is it. So we may be moving through to better times where COVID is concerned. At the moment, you don't envisage the COVID rules on set changing. What transferable skills can you identify and describe that you have learned? What are the benefits of a COVID supervisor? Why would you get into it as a role, even if it's going to be like a temporary role that doesn't exist in a year's time? What's that given you?
So immediately, Without Sin was high-end TV, but it was still low budget within those standards. But what it meant was that we had to interact with every single department. I started out as just COVID marshal, so just shouting at people to put on their masks. And then I got promoted to COVID floor supervisor, because we had situations where stuff was happening on set, but our COVID supervisor and our COVID coordinators weren't seeing it. They weren't being a part of it because they were in the production office dealing with the bigger picture stuff. And so I ended up taking the role of like, I'm on set. If anyone on set has issues, they come to me. And that meant that I got to interact with every single department. That was fantastic for learning about locations, which is a department that's very hard to teach about because you do it all through practice. So I got very close to them and learned all about how they select locations, how far ahead of time they are, how busy they are, because you've got to interact with them for cleaning the locations, fogging the locations, spaces or stuff like that. You get very close with makeup and costume, because we have to limit who can go in, when we're sanitizing, everything like that. AD department, you get incredibly close with, because most productions don't have enough runners, and so they will grab COVID marshals at times. So that's perfect. You've gone in as a COVID marshal, you've got runner credits now. And just you get to know everyone, because you're testing them in the mornings and you're checking their temperatures and everything. So you get to say hi, introduce yourself. And in terms of a role, there aren't that many requirements for being a COVID marshal. You end up getting kind of desperate, because it's a role that not a lot of people want to do. And so there is Screen Skills runs a course online that you can do. It takes about 60 minutes. Do that, you are basically qualified to be a COVID marshal. Some productions have a Zoom call that they want you to tune into, but that's basically 2 hours, and they will sort that out with you. So as long as you're passionate, I know from my perspective, if I was a COVID supervisor, I would basically take anyone who's passionate. It doesn't matter if you've got the experience or not, because that's all that matters.
So it's a foot in the door, and it's a way of networking across different departments in a COVID-safe way, and get your face around for future work. And you would you say that it's definitely benefited you? It's kick-started things for you again?
I now have work again. I didn't work for like a year before it, and I was miserable, to be honest. But I got on that job. I was miserable while I was doing it a bit because it was rough. But out of that, I am now doing what I want to do, and I've just off. We were in a hotel at one point for a couple of weeks over in Shrewsbury. And at the end, we'd meet, all the crew would meet in the hotel bar, and I spoke to the first AD and the director. And just off that one conversation I had, I ended up getting about 4 or 5 jobs. And
Amazing.
It was amazing. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I think it's a really good illustration of how you've turned a negative situation into a positive benefit for your
The thing
career
that nearly
opportunities
killed my
without-
career has ended up jump-starting it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Max, I think you're at the polar opposite end of this whole on-set COVID thing because, as I understand it, you work entirely remotely. Is that the case?
Actually, fun fact. I was brought on initially to do this thing called virtual production, which is where you create environment for the producers to look at in 3D. And I was brought on initially for that. So I started off working in Cardiff, like on set. And I worked there on set in Cardiff for maybe 2 months while they were filming the film that I'm working on right now, which I'm not allowed to talk about. And yeah, so I got to learn quite a bit on set from that. And then after that, I moved on to remote.
So what's your experience? You've had a bit of on-set experience, was that during COVID?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It
so
was last summer.
COVID supervisors like Milan were all roving around and shouting at people, I should imagine?
A
to wear
bit,
masks?
a bit, yeah, yeah. It was
And
all
then-
outdoors when I was there, but yeah.
Right. Okay. That changes the parameters a little, doesn't it? But so, do you what has COVID taught you? Do you consider it a benefit to your career moving forward?
I don't know if it really impacted my career that much, other than the fact that I can work remotely, which is I think better for me. I think I work better remote. But yeah, other than that, I don't think it's really impacted me a ton. I did get to network with a lot of the COVID people at my work. I didn't even realize how much I spoke to them, but yeah, that was a whole element of it.
As you come out of lockdown, can you see your role changing into a more in-person role again, or do you think it's remote for the foreseeable?
I think my industry in visual effects I think it's one of the weird ones where it can work fully remote or it can just go back. My office they're pushing to try and get everyone that lives locally to come in just so they're not wasting having an office. But I think I could get away with working remotely forever if I wanted to. I hope that for my next job role, I'll probably be in studio sometimes, but I can just go wherever.
On this subject, I've got a student question for you, Max, actually, which is entirely relevant to this moment. We will be coming on to Q&A shortly. Max, working remotely in VFX, how much have you had to invest in your own home setup, or do you get support from your employer based on requirements of the job?
Well, all of the stuff that we do at my work, I think most visual effects studios in general, they'll set you up with a VPN client, so you'll connect to that on pretty much any computer, and then you just work from that. So I guess you have like the bare minimum requirement of having like a computer, but like any computer, and then after that you're pretty much good. I know some studios, like one of my friends who also graduated, he got given like a whole like monitor, computer, desk, everything. And some studios do that. Mine doesn't. I've spent quite a lot on my own like home office hardware though. Like I bought a very expensive chair that you can't even see right now. Just for
Max, was that for you though, or was it? Do you think did
It's
you
honestly,
need that expensive chair? Or?
it's really ugly. It's actually for my back health, because I figured I'm gonna live in an office for a while.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense to invest.
So you've made your environment as comfortable as you can for yourself, knowing
Yeah.
that this is you for the foreseeable. That's fair enough. Zara, I don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you. I'm not ignoring you. Has COVID impacted you? What have you learned? Are there any positives that have come out of COVID for you?
So for me, COVID was probably the best thing that happened.
Wow.
And the I was so my radio station is a music sort of entertainment show, and I really focus on bringing a lot of Nottingham artists on the scene and help showcasing them. And during COVID, everyone was like on Instagram. There was talent shows going on by different sort of organizations. There's loads. I was always going on sort of talent shows, Instagram lives, and watching people. And I really use that to network. So the more I was networking online during COVID, because everyone was online at this point, the more artists I was coming across. And then there was producers getting in touch with me, there was musicians getting in touch with me, there was a lot of local artists getting in touch with me, there was a lot of people within Nottingham that wanted to set up music events that were getting in touch with me. And during this, because I had this platform of a radio show, I had so many people in the music industry that were just kind of me in the sense of, can I come onto your show, can I do an interview, can I give you some music for you to play? And I started doing a lot of interviews in the studio, and I would bring in artists and I would showcase them. I would sort of do a whole promo about them. I'd sort of put them out there on social media, and it's kind of helped boost their music up as well. And I feel like that only happened because during COVID, everyone was on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat, and everyone was doing these live videos and, you know, singing and rapping or showing any sort of talent. Some people even created new talents during the pandemic. And I really sort of latched onto that and took every opportunity I could to find people, to network with people, to interact with people. And through that, I made so many sort of networks in the industry that really helped boost my show as well. And sort of, I would say a lot of people, a lot of artists in Nottingham kind of look at my show as a great place to sort of come and showcase their music. And that only happened because of lockdown, because of the network online.
Yeah, I think the fact that everyone was online, you absolutely exploited that to the hilt, because you were already in a position where you had your own show, as you say. Were you in a radio studio? Did you have to travel and go to the studio to do your show?
Yes, the studio is literally lucky a 5-minute drive from me. So I would sort of go in during the week and prepare the show. So I was in full control of the content of my show, what I wanted to put on there, what music I wanted to play. So it's very different, for example, BBC Radio, because they have their own producers, they have, you know, loads of people doing all the backstage thing, and then you've got the presenter. Whereas I kind of do everything when it comes to the show. I learned how to, I've never sort of worked with radio stations or never known how to control any of the decks or anything. So I just taught myself that. I spent hours in the studio in lockdown, just learning things, creating jingles. I was calling in people to come into the studio and make jingles for me, just so I can make my production sound better and cleaner. And I used sort of COVID to go into the studio and spend time just practicing and spend time networking and just building my show to the point where it is now. But I think COVID really helped me with that, because I feel like now everyone's kind of going back in their normal lives, and we're not seeing much talent being exploited on social media anymore, because they're all going back to their sort of day jobs. So it's kind of trying to find the right balance of kind of using social media and doing your day job if you are doing both.
Yeah. It sounds like all three of you have really tried to exploit and find the positives, not tests, obviously, but the positive opportunities out of lockdown. And you've all got very different stories, but all really inspiring stories. So thank you for sharing those. Just a little bit of crystal ball gazing, really. Can you see, how do you see COVID affecting graduates or new entrants into the industry? Because every day I read lots and lots of screen skills articles and industry press about massive skills shortages into the industry. What are your feelings on that? I'll come to Max first.
I think that my industry in general hasn't really been impacted a ton. Like when COVID first hit, there were like massive cullings, like bunch of bunch of artists got fired. My boss got fired from his company. He'd been working there for like 5 years. And yeah, a bunch of people got fired initially. And like they limped around for maybe like 6 months. But as soon as like the first lockdown lifted, they started filming stuff instantly. Last summer as well, they were like really trying to get everything that had been on pause over COVID caught up. So I think that while everything's been catching up, there have been plenty of jobs for visual effects. There's like a pretty big shortage with like a lot of different job roles in visual effects. So yeah, I think for my industry it's fine. I get the general idea that that's the same for film as well. Because like when I'm on set, they're always looking for people. Even if it's just for like basic little security guard jobs, they're always looking.
Right. Okay. Zara, what about you?
I feel like it's a really big sort of opportunity for a lot of people at the moment, and the reason I say that is because a few months ago I was starting to apply for jobs, and through my the last 8 years, I have really struggled to find jobs for videographers or editors, and now I am seeing so much more opportunity for videographers purely because you've got a lot of companies now that want to move sort of their company go into the digital world, and there's loads of recruitment agencies, for example, looking for videographers to create content for them, and these are full-time positions, these are full-time jobs. And I remember a few years ago I was never coming across these roles before, and now I'm coming across so much more. Even now I'm being approached to go on to apply for film and TV jobs, whereas that I was fighting for these roles before.
Yeah.
I was for these roles before, and I could never come across it, especially a permanent position.
Yeah.
And like I've just landed a job, and I start tomorrow as a production coordinator for Linny, who make all the big sort of advertisements for McDonald's, Starbucks, everything. And that opportunity came to me, and that's purely because there's a shortage of people in that creative industry now, and there's so many more companies that are moving into sort of wanting to create more digital content to sort of fit TikTok, to fit into sort of Instagram, and it's now is the perfect time to sort of look for it, and there's only going to be more opportunities. So I think it's actually going to be a lot easier.
That's really positive. Milan, does that correspond with your experience and your predictions and observations of where we're at with new entrants right now?
Yeah, pretty much. There's lots of work going about. It's just about knowing where to look for it and being able to get to it. I think location is a massive part right now, because there still is a lot of work in London. There's always going to be a lot of work in London, but a lot of productions are moving out of London because it's just too expensive. And so the Midlands has seen a boom. I know Sheffield has seen a lot of productions. I'm not too sure about Nottingham, but I know up north, like Leeds and Manchester, like there's a lot going on. I know Marvel's doing a lot of stuff up there right now. So yeah, that's the tricky part.
So here's my next question to all three of you. Milan, if you take this first, where do our students, our graduating students this year, go and find that film and television work? Where should they be looking?
Right. So if you want to be a runner, let me find it. I'm opening up my Facebook now on my phone. Hop on Facebook. I hate Facebook, but it's the lifeblood of this industry, unfortunately. Runners. Let me just find what it's actually called. There's a Facebook group called People in TV Runners. There's about 85,000 people in there. A lot of them are runners looking for work, but a lot of them are people looking for runners. And I think the most valuable thing this particular group can do is a lot of people post their CVs in there and get feedback.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of industry professionals. I spend a lot of time on there giving advice on, right, here's what you can change just to be more appealing. Here's what you can do. Here's the tricks.
Thank you.
That, yeah, look out for groups like that. I know there's one for the Midlands stuff as well. There's like the Midlands Film Society, something like that. There's loads of stuff out there.
Sarah, what about you? Where would you advise our students to go find work now? You've got a job at Linny's. Linny's is based in Mansfield. But where else would you look?
So for me, again, just sort of echoing what's just been said, social media for this industry in particular, social media is your best bet, in my opinion. I've been on sort of things like Indeed, and they don't really recruit through that. You're better off of looking for production companies and applying direct with them, or using Facebook pages and networking on social media.
Could you name check a few of those Facebook pages or social media sites that you think would be worth our students checking out?
Yeah, so with Facebook, all I literally do is just type in what kind of role I'm looking for. So for example, if I'm looking for runners, I just sort of type in runners and look for groups, and you're literally you have a list of groups. So that's one. For me, it kind of depends on where you want to go with your job, but for me, Instagram is a big one. It's I just follow everyone that works for radio stations, everyone that's all different types of presenters. So it's networking with the right people. So mine's would be Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, thank you. Max, what about you? Where do you look to find work? Sorry, I didn't mean for that to rhyme.
It's okay. I tend to look mostly on LinkedIn.
Right.
I think honestly everyone should just get a LinkedIn, even if you don't post. I think
Yeah.
I've made 2 posts ever. That's not really a thing. Yeah, I think LinkedIn's probably the best. Another thing that I think people don't take advantage of enough, which I really do, is not many people know the companies that actually make things. Like, people don't pay attention to the names in the credits or anything. So just knowing the companies and applying to the companies directly can get you quite far.
I think that's a really good piece of advice, actually. Look, always stay in the cinema to watch the credits, because they list all of the companies that have actually made that film. And if that's
a really good point for like TV and stuff, actually, because like ITV and BBC don't necessarily make everything. They hire companies to make everything. So don't bother applying to ITV and BBC necessarily. Go straight to the companies, cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
That can save you a lot of time.
On the vinyl card, it's called the end card on terrestrial TV channels and you know, streamers as well. Basically, there'll always be an end card that shows you all of the production companies that have made an investment into that show. So you know, you need to Google those sites and look at those. And actually, sometimes look at the people that are working, like the producers. If they're regular producers of programs that you really like the look of and fancy working on, then, you know, drop them an email. There's all the information's out there. You've just got to go and dig for it a little bit, and then make your requests, you know, ask. So I just want to come on to some questions, because I'm aware it's just gone 11, and I'm just looking down the list. So here's a question. I think this is more VFX based. This is from Nicola Albans, 3rd year VFX. How often would you recommend updating your LinkedIn profile? I'll ask Max that question.
I honestly barely ever update it. I never update anything like pictures or titles or anything. If I get a job, I'll update that like 2 months after I've done the job, you know. I'll update my what I do in the job every like 6 months. I don't spend a long time on LinkedIn. I just sort of scroll through it and look at stuff and add people that...
It's good for following companies as well, because all of those production companies we've just talked about, actually, they all have LinkedIn profiles and they advertise jobs on there. ITV Jobs advertise a lot on LinkedIn, as do BBC as well. And, you know, it's really worth looking at them, because apprenticeship schemes and new entrant programs on all of the major production companies will advertise for those roles on LinkedIn. So if there's one reason to have a profile, even if you don't update it regularly, and I would just add to that, Max, I'd update my profile when my job changed or when I've got a new credit under my belt, and I would keep on adding those credits, because you quickly accrue a breadth of experience which is visible to anyone that's looking at your profile. Another question here from Nicola Albans, 3rd year VFX. Are any of these networking events invite only, or are they open to apply to? Where would you recommend looking for networking events? That's a question to anybody. Step in now.
I would say for me, Confetti was a perfect place for me to start with the networking. Confetti always put on networking events. As far as I'm concerned, or as far as I remember, I don't think you had to sort of be invited to it. It was kind of, I remember when I was at Confetti, they used to do a lot of sort of things in Antenna where you was just invited to go. Maybe sometimes you would have to put your name down on a list, but it's just sort of, Confetti kind of really helped me with that. And when I networked with the people through Confetti, it's kind of keeping in touch with them. When you've got a casual person you go with all the time and they come across another networking event, they will get in touch with you saying, you know, do you want to come? It could be someone else. It's just kind of networking with the people, and they'll tell you about it, and they'll share something on Facebook or they'll share something on Instagram, and they'll tell you about it's literally just us speaking to people and them recommending you, then bringing you. But I would always suggest going to a networking event with people, because you create a community and create a family of people that you're going to these events with. Therefore, they'll take you with them when they find one as well.
Yeah. I think also, obviously, as we're coming out of lockdown, we'll be seeing more in-person networking events starting to pop up again, because obviously we haven't had that for the last couple of years. But and actually, Sarah, I think it's a really good point. You know, your peers, your students, your friends on your courses are naturally going to be good people to go networking with in a group. Just want to carry on looking down these. Oh, here's a question. Josh Baldaro, a second year VFX, do you think it's more beneficial to connect with people directly on platforms like LinkedIn, or connecting to studios through their official emails? That's a question to anybody.
It depends. For me, when reaching out to people, if you know them, contact them personally. Even if you've just interacted with them once, contact them personally. I know that during my times at Industry Week, at the end, I'd always try and approach whoever was talking and get their email or something like that, and then reach out to them through that way. I think I got a couple of jobs through that maybe. But yeah, it depends.
Okay, thank you. Question for Zara from Anonymous. Have you encountered any hardships as a woman in the industry? Interesting question. International Women's Day tomorrow.
I found that I really struggled when it came to doing music videos as a woman. That's why I kind of gave up doing it, because I was finding I was doing a lot of videos for rappers, and it was just a set full of men who had who were kind of I felt like it's really difficult to explain. I feel like, you know, when you're the only woman on set, you do feel it. And it is difficult at times. I feel like it's definitely sort of moving on a bit now, and it is improving. But I remember when I first did start out, it was hard because there's a lot that I couldn't do in my physical capabilities, like carry really heavy equipment, to what, you know, men who have a bit more of a build on them can carry. And I felt almost like I'm at a disadvantage, and I feel like I was kind of looked at as, oh, she can't do this, let's get a man on the set because he can carry this equipment, he can do all of this. So it was hard at the start, but I think that kind of drives me to do it even more, so to prove I'm wrong. So it was at the start, but I think it is getting a lot better now.
So you think things have moved on? What do you think that was about? Was it literally a physical thing?
I feel like for me it was a physical thing. It was more I do a lot of events now, and it's literally carrying heavy equipment, and it is that physical thing. Oh, she's small, and the girl, like, she can't carry that. Yeah, we'll do that. And then you're almost just stood there looking around, and you feel useless. And it's just because you're a girl, and they just think you can't do it, but you can. So sometimes, like what I've just done now recently is I'll just do it, even if I'm struggling. I will show them, no, I can do it. So it's kind of just proven them wrong, and it was frustrating at the start because it's almost patronizing.
Yeah, keep on keeping on, Zara. We can still do it. We can do it. We absolutely can do it. So you keep on representing, and I hope I'd encourage other females to do the same thing, most definitely. Thank you. It's a good answer. I've got another VFX question for Max from Alec Zalga. I'm sorry about pronouncing your surname incorrectly, probably, so apologies for that. Max, as a person who's had a huge amount of experience with applying for VFX jobs, what tips would you give to apply for jobs after graduating?
Oh, I think I think the big part that I got to take advantage of was I sort of analyzed the industry from sort of like taking a step back and not focusing on what I particularly enjoy, but definitely considering it. But focusing more on like what's happening in the industry, how it's moving, what's important, and what they're using. So right now they're using Houdini a lot. They're using USD a lot, and they're using Unreal a lot. They're like the big software things they're using. So I sort of started focusing more and more on learning those things, not necessarily the things which are pretty saturated specialisms in the industry. And yeah, once I had all that down, there were a lot of jobs that they just couldn't hire for. So I just applied for a lot of stuff like that on LinkedIn.
So you looked where there were technical skills gaps that needed filling,
Yeah.
and you made sure you were up to speed with those software packages.
Yeah, because it was usually like most people want to go into visual effects to do like 3D modeling. So usually there'll be a lot of areas which people just aren't interested in doing. Mostly the technical stuff where you can just get a pretty easy win with that.
Thank you for that. Okay, I want to rattle through because we're getting loads of questions now, so keep them coming on chat. It's excellent. Okay, Moon Hobbs. This is on the networking theme again. So, and it's from Moon Hobbs. I took a big step and went to a networking event. I talked to 2 people who seemed interested in me, but they never got back to me. Should I take it personally? Where do I go from here?
Never take it personally, in my experience, because it's a bad road to go down. It's never you. It is. Sometimes it's a matter of there are such specific needs you need to fill out sometimes, and you can never appeal to those specific needs without knowing what people need. You just got to keep going. Unfortunately, there's no better advice for it. I don't think. Like, you just got to keep trying.
I think what I would add to that is persistence. So from me being on the other side, where I have gone to networking events and I've had artists coming as a radio presenter, there's so many times, you know, we've exchanged emails, numbers, and they'll get in touch with me. And there's so many times I haven't been back in touch purely because of just how busy I've been. And it's never intentional. It's nothing against them. But when they've maybe reached out to me again, from that, I see that they're passionate, they're persistent, and that itself says a lot. So I will always make the extra effort to get back in touch with them because I can see that they're motivated and they've got the drive and they're persistent about it. So I think that's a really big thing to sort of have, is if you don't hear back from them, get in touch with them again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, you've never wasted your time. I had someone I gave my email to when I was 17, and they contacted me very recently about a job just out of nowhere. Like, you never know. As long as you've made an impression, your face is going to stick in their brain for God knows how long, and then they're going to think, right, oh yeah, I need someone for this. Yeah. And then you can crop up and help out.
Yeah, sometimes they haven't got anything suitable right now, but that doesn't mean that they won't have something suitable in the next 3 to 6 months. So as you say, persistence, keeping in the front of people's minds. If you've had a good positive exchange with them, I think that's really good advice. What advice can you give to students on lower level courses that may be still finding their way through this industry as a subject and may be working on things they may not enjoy? I feel like we need to unpack that a little bit more, but focus. I guess it's about focus. What advice would you give to people that are still making their way through, and they might not be enjoying everything on their course?
Well, I only did the 2-year. I didn't do the university Confetti. I just did the 2-year like college part. And yeah, there's a lot of that. And finding out what you enjoy. That's the hard part, figuring out which sectors of this industry you enjoy and what parts you want to focus on. My advice, to add on part of that question, my advice to lower level is you don't necessarily need university after this. I think it helps and it can give you room to experiment within what work you want to do. But no, most people I know in the industry who are doing a lot of work now at the same sort of age as me didn't go to university or film school or anything like that. They just got out there and started working. And a lot of the time you can do a lot more work and a lot better by doing that.
I think like knowing your options at all times is like super valuable as well. Like, because like in hindsight, there were so many ways where I could have gotten to the situation that I'm in now, just way quicker. Like after doing like a college course, I could have gone into an apprenticeship and ended up here the exact same. You know, 3 years earlier. So I think knowing your options at every single point is the most helpful thing you can do for yourself.
I guess the question coming back at seeing it from a student perspective is how do you know your options? If you're doing certain elements of a course and you're just not enjoying them, how do you find the bits that you do? How do you persevere through those less enjoyable bits?
Podcasts have to be pretty helpful.
Podcasts.
Yeah, I just like industry podcasts though, not like random people.
Okay. What sort of industry podcasts, Max?
There's this one that I really like for visual effects called is it called Befores and Afters? Yeah, it's got Hugo Guerrero in. He's talking Industry Week. Yeah, it's really good. You get to keep on top of a lot of things, and they'll mention a lot of small ways that you can learn in it. I think also things like screen skills are really, really good for film and visual effects, and games as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a wealth of free training courses that you can sign up for on Screen Skills. The COVID supervisor being one of them, which obviously we encourage our media students to take that course as standard anyway, and get the certificate, and then basically redo the course because there are changes to it. So yeah, absolutely. Zara, have you got any other?
Yeah, I was
tips?
just add that. So when I was sort of in college, I did the college and the university course, and I always found that when I was in college, I really networked with the uni students a lot. And in fact, I think our year really did that. The HE students and the FE students really mixed, and we would both be on each other's sets. So we would work with the HE students, and then they would help us on our shoots, and it really helped. So I'd say sort of really try and network with the other students above you who have got the experience of where you are now. Also, when it comes to trying to find out what you like, so I think you really need to have perseverance, because no matter what job you have, there'll always be a part of the job you won't like. And in the course, for example, I hated audio. Like I did not. I loved doing everything else, but when it came to audio, I hated it. But I had to do it to learn it, and now, in the long run, I'm grateful that I did that, because I'm now in this industry and I can understand when it comes to the audio guys doing what they're doing. I can understand what they're doing to a certain extent because I've learned it. I do it, but I know what kind of a gist of what they're doing. So as much as you won't enjoy it, it is helping you in the long run. And
having an appreciation of that thing and how it fits into the bits that you do enjoy might actually serve you well in the longer term.
Absolutely, and it has done. Yeah, brilliant. So persevering with it.
It's really difficult, isn't it, when you don't know what you don't know, really, actually. I mean, this question has come up again in chat. It's like, how do you keep going despite rejections? What do you do to stay resilient? How do you all develop a resilient mindset, a perseverance mindset, keep on going?
For me, something I've done very recently is I've got a part-time job on the side. I work at my local pub for like 8 hours a week. It's not a big deal. It's really chilled, but it means that I'm doing something else. In this industry, we tend to make it our lives and exist only within this bubble, and that can get awful at times. It can get stressful, and especially when work isn't quite working out, it can break you. But by me just having this little job at a pub, it's meant that I can now stretch out and get to know these people and see other people's lives for just a little bit a week. And it also helps with, I had a recent shoot where a producer basically wanted me to do 13-hour days every day working from home. And it's hard to say no when you're not actually doing anything else. You can feel bad for that, but when you've got something else actually on, it's very easy to say, no, I'm doing this other thing, back off, and they will. So yeah, try to have other parts of your life that you're also passionate about.
Absolutely. Zara, Max, how do you persevere? How do you keep on going? How are you resilient?
I would it's really, really important the people you keep around you. When I stopped being around creatives, I just didn't have the creative space in my head anymore. I was no longer around it. I was no longer inspired. I was no longer motivated. And the minute I started hanging out with just one person who was back in that creative industry, it fueled me up again. So I really think it's so important to be around people who are doing what you want to do, because not only will they help you up there, but it helps inspire you. It gets your creative juices flowing. And that for me has been the biggest difference. Every time I see someone that's doing something creative, I'll just jump on board with them if I know them, and it just helps me in my sort of own headspace and motivating me. So that's my biggest advice.
Thank you, that's great advice. Max, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, my method again is options. I think knowing your options made me feel a lot more secure when I get rejected. Because I knew that like if let's say I didn't get a job after applying for like 150 of them, right? It would obviously like hit me, and I'd feel like I'm not great. But then like maybe if I'm not great now, I'll be good in a year. So getting to know my options, take a year, maybe take a year out, maybe get a like a regular kind of job, maybe study more. They're all good options that I could have done. And I think, yeah, knowing my options made me feel a lot more secure in everything that I did.
That's all really valuable advice. Thank you very much indeed. I'm just looking down the list. Here's a question. I'm not quite sure who it's for. Hang on a minute. I've got a question for Max. You mentioned some skill set shortages you encountered. What roles or departments have those been in? I think you touched upon that in an earlier response, but could you give us a bit more detail of that?
There are tons. So most of the hiring that happens, there will be some things where they're like short notice. Like tracking is a lot of the time short notice. It's camera tracking where you get the 3D position of cameras. Animation again is usually quite short notice. Compositors, we're hiring for compositors at my company. They're always pretty short notice kind of things. And then you have the long-term things where companies will be hiring for like 6 months. They're usually effects, which is what I do. It's like explosions and stuff. Effects is usually one of the very good ones for it. There's the best one for it is probably groom, which is like 3D hair. That's probably the best one for it. A lot of people have said if you can do that, you can just get a job. Even if you don't like it, you can get a job and then jump into something else that you do like. It's a good way in. So yeah, groom, effects, and then tracking's generally quite good. With tracking though, a lot of the industry is moving because it's quite globalized. It's moving to like India and countries where the cost of work is cheaper, even if that's a bit unethical. But yeah, I think knowing the stuff that's really in high demand, like groom, like effects, is super, super valuable.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got another question here. Did you apply for jobs that you didn't technically meet the requirements for? For example, 2 years experience in feature film production. Is there any point in applying?
Oh yeah,
Yes.
My current job is it's a senior job. I meant to have 7 years experience. Didn't have it at all. Didn't have any experience. Yeah, just apply for everything. Worst case, they'll say no. Who cares?
What's a no? It's not,
Also, if you get rejected for that, it's way better because you're like, I shouldn't have even gotten it anyway.
Yeah, they'll put up these postings of like, oh yeah, we want 3 years experience or whatever. Then they'll put that out and realize, wait, no one's applying because they think they need 3 years experience. And then they'll see your application and go, screw it, I guess we'll go with them. It's better than nothing, isn't it?
Yeah, go for it. We say just go for it. Zara, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I apply for everything. I don't care. I don't even look at what they require. If I know I can do it, I will apply for it. And if I get an interview, I'll show them that I can do it. Like yeah.
Brilliant. Such positive responses from you all. I've got time probably just to round up with a final question to all of you, if you could answer in turn. And it's the best piece of advice you could offer our students today. I'll ask Max first.
Oh, oh. I think there is the knowing options one's coming back again. That one's great. It's the best answer. But I think following trends is really good, really helpful for visual effects, especially. Networking is always important. LinkedIn's always important. I think also knowing how convenient you can be is probably the best part. Most of the time, companies won't want to be hiring for a job for too long. They'll like every moment that they're not hire that they've got a listing up is them losing money. So they're going to try and hire as soon as they can. So just trying to fill a box is really probably the most useful thing that you can do.
Just grab that opportunity, even if it's not quite what you want.
Yeah, because you can just move into another job at the same company.
Yeah, absolutely. It's getting your foot in the door, isn't it? It's getting that first break and then seeing what's out there or within.
Yeah, once you get like the first job as well, from personal experience, it's way easier. It's way easier to get other opportunities. After I had like 3 months experience in my current job, I was just getting messaged from random people on LinkedIn that I'd never seen before, just because I fit into their like search criteria.
Yeah.
So yeah, just getting the first job is really the most important thing.
Excellent. Thank you, Zara. Best piece of advice.
My biggest thing is as a student, my best advice is utilize every person you've got around you, all of the other students. You're all in this course that, you know, you're all doing the course for a reason. You all want to do the same thing and be in the same industry. So really work together and, you know, go to Broadway cinema on a weekend and be inspired by independent films that you watch. You know, just do things together. And I think that's really key, because these people will maybe help you when they all graduate. And it's the networking, it's going back to the networking again. So for me, once you've sort of graduated, is just networking, and social media for me is the biggest thing right now. It's the biggest platform you've got right now, especially for a creative industry. Make some stuff in your own time and just put it out there on social media, send it to people. So if, you know, as a radio presenter, I'll record demos and just send it out to every person on social media that I can find. So yeah, that's just utilizing the platforms you've got.
Excellent. Thank you. Milan, finally to you.
In terms of grander advice, I don't know, but I've got some props. I found the other day, these are all my notebooks from my time at Confetti, and I had a quick look through them, and I found my Industry Week notes, and there was so much in there. And I remember writing down stuff from every speaker, and they all had different advice. Like just now, we've got different advice. Everyone has the different ways they got into the industry. And so you start thinking to yourself, how am I going to do all of this? How am I going to apply all of this? And then I learned a long time afterwards, forge your own path. That's the number one key. Don't follow what everyone else does. If there was one way to get into this industry, someone would write a book about it and it'd sell millions, and that'd be it. So figure out a way to forge your own path, do what you think is right in the moment, and do it yourself. Don't rely on a path someone has set out for you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. That's all we've got time for in this Industry Week session. Guest speakers, thank you so much for your time this morning to Zara, Milan and Max. If you could stay online for a couple of minutes more, that would be amazing. But I'd just like to say thank you to all the students for attending this morning. I hope you've got some really good takeaway advice from our friends, your friends, these graduates, and good luck with your career searches yourself, and enjoy the rest of Industry Week. Thank you so much.